This is the Extra Mile.
Hi, everybody. And what did you point?
No.
Oh.
I was just asking George if my all right was on the recording or not. If it's not, now it is.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome,
it is on the recording.
welcome back to the Extra Mile. All right.
All right.
I'm Justin. That's G5. All right.
All right.
All right. And that's Caleb over there. All right.
All right. I don't know what's happening.
You're wondering what you just tuned into.
Magic. Magic is happening. Well, welcome to the Extra Mile. If you're just tuning in, we're a religious, semi-religious podcast. We talk about life. We talk about the Bible. We talk about our love of one another and of Christ. And so we like, comment, subscribe, and do the things. Do all the business. And we haven't talked about the email, though. If you have any questions, email us.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think we ever really gotten any. I think we just always answer all the questions.
Yeah, that's
I'd
what
like
we
to
do.
Put a challenge out to our viewers now. If you have topics, questions, or anything, send it over to us because we would love to do a podcast on a topic that you enjoy or want to hear more about. So.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Apparently, we've now added a question and answer session to our podcast. So. It is so.
It has been.
Mark the time and date. Cool. Well, welcome. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome, friends. We've got coffee. Hopefully, if you've got a cuppa, enjoy it with us. This is nice and hot. An espresso machine. Ow, that's hot. Okay. Well, last time we talked about Thanksgiving. It's sort of the holiday times here.
Yeah.
And are y'all doing any traveling for the holidays?
We did most of ours over Thanksgiving, but we'll go back to the same place, East Texas, for New Year's Eve just for a couple of days.
Tyler?
Uh-huh.
East Texas?
Yep.
Yeah. See, I always say East Texas, and Greenville is where I'm from. And it's sort of everybody's like, that's not East Texas. And I go, oh, okay, fine.
Well, we're originally from White House, so I'm used to saying East Texas because I would start with Tyler and be like, do you know Tyler? And people would be like, oh, yeah. And then I'd be like, oh, you know White House? And I'm like, no. But it's where Patrick Mahomes is from. I went to high school with him.
Did you really?
I did. You didn't know that?
Really?
No.
He was there?
Is he a nice person?
He was a freshman when I was a senior.
Really?
Uh-huh.
He was a freshman. You were a senior.
When you were a senior?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think I might have said hi to him one time. But
Really?
When he got really famous, I have a lot of friends that live in Missouri because I grew up going to Missouri camp. And they reached out to me and they were like, hey, do you have his phone number? Are you Facebook friends with him? Like, can we talk to him? I'm like, oh, yeah, I've got him on speed dial. No, I don't. But it was funny when he got real famous and won the Super Bowl. People from my high school were posting pictures with him and them in the picture, but it's them in the like football stands with him in the background. Like, look, it's Patrick. And so
I was there.
Yeah.
Wow.
He seems like the kind of guy, though, that if you texted him, I mean, I'm sure he changed his number, but
Probably.
if you texted him, that he would be like, oh, hey, hope things are going well. You know, he seems like that kind of person.
It was pretty cool, though, for
Interesting.
Podunk, White House, Texas, when they won the Super Bowl
Yeah.
because I went back there. And at that point, my parents had moved to Tyler, but I just drove through the hometown just to see what it was like. And, I mean, every single donut shop, which we have like 12 of them, was just decked out in, what is it, red
Kansas
and yellow.
City.
And, Kansas City
Kansas
stuff.
City.
So, yeah.
Isn't that so interesting? Ever since he came and then went to the professionals and then won the Super Bowl, you see Patrick Mahomes all over Lubbock.
Yeah.
He's in murals. They paint
That's
his
Lubbock, though. We have nothing to attach ourselves with, so when someone does something amazing, I'm going to attach myself to it. So,
Is Buddy Holly from here?
yeah, and Buddy
He's
Holly's another
absolutely-
example.
That was the other one that I
Yeah,
thought.
He's
it's like
absolutely from
we
here.
could just anyone be from Lubbock. Great. So
Well,
just
Buddy
do
Holly,
your thing,
he's-
and cotton is your thing.
Yeah.
So.
Eli Whitney. I don't think he's from here.
He's not from Lubbock.
Yeah.
He was before
But why
Lubbock.
is that the one fact we all know about the
I don't know.
inventors?
That yes.
Is that not the case?
Yeah.
Like, I know that one. I
From
know
grade
that
school?
one.
Who invented the cotton gin? Eli Whitney.
Eli Whitney.
I don't know why that's stuck.
That
in
one sticks.
Everyone's heads.
Do you know another concept that Eli Whitney invented?
No.
What?
Have I stumped you?
Did he churn butter?
Perhaps.
Did he
One of his
invent Cracker
machines did. He invented the concept of interchangeable parts.
Barrel? Interesting. So
What?
like different parts.
Manufacturing.
Oh,
So like if you were gonna, I remember this from history class. This is a lesson that Hunt Tooley gave. He says if before Eli Whitney came up with interchangeable parts, one of the things that he did is he went to the president and he was having this concept of, okay, if I have these screws and these plates, and he took 5 muskets and he brought them to the president, and he took the muskets and they went out and fired a bunch of them, and they took them down to parts, and then he jumbled all the parts together and reassembled the 5 muskets using the parts, which to us is not a novel concept. That's just what we do, right?
Right.
Like if I had 10 of these Nespresso machines and I took them all apart, and I had 10 of these and 10 of the casings and 10 of the, and I put it all back together, they would all probably work, right?
Right. But were these muskets from different manufacturers?
Well, no, it was, well, so before interchangeable parts, where we had like manufacturing, like a blacksmith had, a weaponsmith had to tool.
I realize now this is a dumb question.
Well, no. It's a legitimate question because
Right.
To put yourself in historical context, Eli Whitney is one of the, yes, he came up with a cotton gin, and that's a thing, but he
took
also
these crafts and manufactured them in a small setting before the president.
Yeah, well, so like what he had actually done as a demonstration is he had a blacksmith. He hired a blacksmith to make parts that were all identical in a concept, because before then you would build a musket, you would forge the barrel, and you would do the mechanics and the springs, and you would just custom make everything. Oh, okay, I need. It's like the machinist on YouTube who,
Mark Rober.
No, My Mechanics, where he he takes old stuff and he restores them, right? And he goes, oh, well, I need these 4 screws. I make new ones, and he just makes 4 screws. That's what you had to do, right, in the old times. So you had to actually take a die and make these screws. And so the idea of interchangeable parts is what Eli Whitney, it's the thing that he's not famous for, but that he did that changed the world.
Wow.
And so from that concept, that's when you have like standard measurements and, okay, well, we want threads that are this way. And
Did he do that first before the cotton gin?
that I don't know, but I do remember that from history class, is that was one of the things that he really pioneered, was the concept of interchangeable parts.
Wow. Well, that's really cool.
To Eli Whitney. I mean, if he did bad things, then we're sort of blind to that, so apologies.
To interchangeable
parts.
So, I don't know if this will be a good segue or not, but
To the Bible.
kind of. It's a roundabout way to get there, but it made me think about. This is gonna sound so weird, but have y'all read the Aragon series?
The dragons?
Uh-huh.
No, I haven't.
Okay, it's a teenage book series. I reread all of them because he came out with a new book called Murtagh.
Yes, you were
And
telling me about this.
read that book, which that's a whole nother thing we'll talk about after the podcast. But one of the really cool concepts in those books is your true name. So the names of everything have a certain power in these books. And if you know the true name of the thing, you have complete control over the thing. So if you were able to find out what your true name was when you speak it out loud or you say it to someone, it's essentially telling someone who you are as a person in entirety. And it's like both a humbling and like terrifying thing, because then you give them complete control over who you are as a person. But you were making me actually think about that with interchangeable parts, because one really cool thing is that name is who you are, but over time, whether it's through influence of other people or the world or even just yourself, you can actually change who you are as a person, and your name in turn changes with that. So you're not bound by that name anymore. So it was just making me think about like us, and we don't necessarily have interchangeable parts. That's where I was like, how do I relate to this? But who you are as a person, you know, can change and develop over time based upon your experiences or things like that. So I'll let you take and run with that.
It's an interesting concept. Biblically, that happens all the time, right? How many times do the characters of the Bible get renamed?
Mm-hmm.
You're no longer this, you're this.
I do wonder, like,
Abram, you are now called Abraham.
which name is God putting for me? Like or saying, or does it call me? Is it George / Tristan / G5 Loomis. It's just it's like on and on. I don't know. When I dream, I call myself Tristan.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Which is my family name for those who don't know. But yeah, names have a lot of meaning. You look in the Bible, you have Peter, Paul, all of these people whose names mean a lot. If you're in the Old Testament and you're studying a character, you look up the definition of that name. It helps. Jacob, Esau. So those things, along with that idea, I mean, we could look at a parable. If you want to turn to Matthew 25. I don't know the answer to this question. Maybe someone else does. But this is an interesting thing that I noticed. I talked to the teen class. This is my lesson on the teen class. I was going to make it into a sermon, but now I'm not. It's a podcast. So there you go.
It can still be a sermon.
No.
I don't think many people listen to the podcast. By the way, if you listen to the podcast, tell us that you listen to the podcast. It's really encouraging.
It is. But Matthew 25, this is the parable of the talents, right? Is that the right passage? Okay.
14?
Yeah. Read the parable of the talents.
Aye, Captain.
Hold on. Before you do, I can ask you a few questions. You're here to do what I tell you to do.
I will gladly read.
What do you think of when you think of the parable of the talents? What's the gist?
What is a talent? That's what I think of.
Money.
Money. Okay.
No.
But what metaphor for the talent is?
Talent.
Interesting. You're wrong. Go ahead, read that.
I thought it was like abilities, talents.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Corrected.
You had to stand up.
No one could hear me. See, it always gets a laugh. All right, fine. Matthew 25:14. Here we go. Is everybody done clearing their throats? Pardon me. Okay. Matthew 25:14. For it is just like a man about to go on a journey who called his own slaves and entrusted his possessions to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, each according to his own ability. And he went on his journey. Immediately the one who had received the 5 talents went and traded them, and gained 5 more talents. In the same manner the one who had received the 2 talents gained 2 more. But he who received the 1 talent went away and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. Now after a long time, the master of those slaves came and settled accounts with them. The one who had received the 5 talents came up and brought 5 more talents, saying, Master, you entrusted 5 talents to me. See, I have gained 5 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful slave. You were faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. Also the one who had received the 2 talents came up and said, Master, you entrusted 2 talents to me. See, I have gained 2 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful slave. You were faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. And the one who also had received the 1 talent came up and said, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. And I was afraid, and went away and hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what is yours. But his master answered and said to him, You wicked, lazy slave, you knew that I reap where I did not sow, and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have put my money in the bank, and on my arrival I would have received my money back with interest. Therefore take away the talent from him, and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more shall be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who does not have, even what he does have shall be taken away. Throw out the worthless slave into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
Okay, cool. So this parable is basically telling us what we do in the meantime as we wait for the day of the Lord. But you were saying, and this is what I thought too until I read this again, is that the talents are a metaphor for our talents and our abilities and our skills, right? And that's what I was thinking as well.
I've
And
always thought that until this moment.
Yeah, and then we read, I think it's just because of the English language. And we see that word talents, which is actually money. And we think, it makes us think of talents and things like that. But if that is the case, then the thing is, is it 16? Let's see. Oh, verse 15. Then verse 15 makes no sense. It says, to the one he gave 5 talents. So he gives talents, right? He gives abilities. If that's the case, why does he give abilities? It says, according to his abilities. Why does God give us abilities according to our abilities if the talents are a metaphor for our abilities?
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the talents
you.
can't be abilities, because then that verse makes no sense.
So it's just money?
Is it money? What is and that's the thing I haven't answered yet. What is talents a metaphor for?
Well, I mean, literally in verse 27, that's why my mind always goes to money. It says, then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers.
Right.
So literally thinking talents, but candidly, I don't know why. I don't know if it's just because every single time we talk about that parable, we're maybe kind of talking about it in the sense of money, or that's what's been taught to me before. I've never thought of being a talent, an actual ability.
You never have?
No, I've never even.
I've always been
until
taught
you literally
talent.
just brought
Really?
it up. Yeah. So
Well, don't think that.
I don't know why. I really don't know why.
I don't know. Maybe you should think that. But like you're saying, yes, a talent is, I was looking this up, it's about 15 years' wages.
A talent is 15 years
15 years wages.
Wow.
I believe I can look that up. And so actually he gave the one talent man a lot of money. If you take
That's
that
a lot of money.
for today's money, well, you're not including taxes. I looked that up. I could be wrong on all this, but the average household income in America is about like $74,000.
Wow.
You times that by 15, that's a little over $1 million. And so he gave the 5 talent man a lot of money. And he gave the 2 talent man a lot of money. And he gave the 1 talent man a lot of money. And so you're like, okay. I don't know if this is literally talking about money or if it's a metaphor for something else.
Well, I think the metaphor for me that I always took from it is obviously the literal part of it is just money, but then sowing and reaping the word.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's right or not, but that's just where my mind always went to. If you're just hoarding it to yourself, then it's not going to benefit anyone else. If you're investing it in others, then that's where you see the growth. And
there is a stewardship, right? Yeah, being a good steward, what God has given you, one of which is the gospel, like you're saying. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I almost see the talents as a metaphor for opportunities that God has given us. Because you notice that the master here is gone. He's not gone for a short day. I think sometimes we think that he's gone for like a day. It says he's gone for a long time. That's all it says. A long time. So however that is, there's a lot of opportunities there to do with what God has given us. But yeah, he's also given us abilities. Like, I'm not discrediting that. He gives us skills and abilities. You can turn to 1 Corinthians 12 to see that. But in this parable, you can't make sense of the parable if you apply skills and abilities, because then he's giving you abilities according to your abilities. So what is he? Yeah, what is it talking about?
To me, it seems that it's connected to the previous parable. Because,
yes, it is. In context, it is, yes.
Yeah, for him to say, like, it opens in verse 14, for it is just like, well, what is
Right.
it? What's the referent?
Kingdom of heaven.
Yeah, and you go all the way back to Matthew 24, the coming of the Lord he's talking about. And then,
are you ready?
yeah, it's... Who then is the faithful and sensible slave whom his master has put in charge of his household to give them their food at the proper time? Blessed is that slave whom his master finds so doing when he comes. So that's the thing is, you put it in the context of the master goes away, right?
Right.
He entrusts a certain amount of possession or a certain amount of talent or a certain amount of money or whatever it may be. Here are 5 M&Ms. Make 5 more M&Ms, which doesn't really work. But to say, let's just say money. You have capacity. You have, and I think that's why the parallelism. I've never thought of it only as money. I've never thought of it only as talent or ability. I see it as a parallelism, just to say there's some people who are in the kingdom who have money.
For sure.
And there's some people who are in the kingdom who have ability and don't have any money. And the concept is that if you do nothing with it, if you bury it in the ground and forget it and don't work with it. Now, here's the other thing is that none of these people lost it. None of these people lost the money.
That's true. There's a few things here. I find it interesting that the one talent man went and buried his talent, his whatever God gave him, his opportunities, his time, which I think, but I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. Opportunities more so, but with opportunities comes time. But he buried that in the ground. Like that's where we will all be someday. And we're told in Ecclesiastes 3 that from dust we came, to dust we will go. And so he's burying his talents in the ground, and the talents are almost a metaphor for both the 5-talent man, the 2-talent man, and the 1-talent man. It's a metaphor for where we will go someday, where we will be, what we will do, who we are passionate about serving will determine a lot of things about our future. And if you're burying your talents in the ground, to the ground you will stay.
It seems like it's dead. If it's in the ground, it's
exactly,
dead.
It's dead.
It's not alive.
Dead. It's not alive. That's the
working.
point I'm trying to say. Yeah, exactly. It's dead. Yeah.
Cool. I've never thought that before.
Yeah, he buried it. He killed it. It's very poetic in that sense, and that he's putting to death himself. He's choosing death by burying his talent in the ground.
And the rebuke is that he's wicked and lazy.
Yeah. And you know what's crazy? It's just like he didn't have to double his money. We think that he had to double his money because the 5-talent man was ambitious and he went and did business and he got 5 more talents. And the 2-talent man did the same thing. But nowhere are we told that's the qualification, like that's the goal, that's what you have to do. In fact, the master says to the 1-talent man, all you had to do was literally take that money, instead of putting it in the ground, take it and put it in the bank and invest. And then you could go do whatever you wanted to do and play around. Like he's telling you, here's the least possible thing you could have done to make me happy, and just give interest on the money or gain interest. So it's like, I think we put too much pressure on ourselves to be the 5-talent man, the 2-talent man, when we just got to do the best we can with what God has given us. The opportunities I think that God has given us. Again, I could be wrong on that, but and it may be with wealth, that's an opportunity often to do good things.
Precisely.
Yeah.
I mean, that if that's a gift that you're given,
right,
that's very clear that what you are to do is to share it. And then so you're saying that the teaching here is, for to everyone who has, more shall be given.
Right.
And this is from God. God is going to bless. If he blesses you and you put it to work, God's going to give you more. And he will have an abundance. You're going to have more than you could ever want.
Oh, that's good. I think actually that might be key to understanding what talents are. They are responsibilities, perhaps. Because he says, I have given this to you as a responsibility. What are you going to do with it? And then when we do something good with it, when it increases, he will give us, like you're saying, more responsibility in the future. Maybe that's it.
That makes sense for growth. I mean, we've had a couple new elders, I guess, promoted or appointed.
Yeah.
Here, and I've looked at that so interestingly to say that's something that everybody should strive for, is those qualifications. But not every person is qualified for that work. But that doesn't mean that that's where you should be. That's just an appointment.
Right.
And so one of the things in the adult class that we're studying here in congregation is the people who, Barnabas is one of my favorites because he was such an encourager to people, so much so that they renamed him Barnabas, which is son of encouragement.
There you go. There's the name thing.
And so to be that person, to be someone, okay, well, your role here is to work with the local group. Your role here is to reach out and call the masses. You're a minister, whatever your role is, whatever your responsibility is.
Responsibilities. Maybe that's it.
And then you say, well, this is what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be working. And if you are given that, I mean, that's why I've always said that it is ability or it's talent or it's what has been gifted to you, because it's a responsibility that you have. You have a blessing. You have an ability that other people don't. You have maybe an ability when it comes to money. You have an opportunity to, like if Jeff Bezos gave a portion of his wealth to feed the world or whatever. I mean, we always say that, oh, what if we just took that money and nonchalantly put it in this account and now there's no more starvation, which isn't realistic. But
what annoys me about that is he can give millions and millions of dollars away. People are like, that's so generous, but in reality, it's really it's just a larger scale of what I can do as well. It's not necessarily more generous.
Well, and there's that observation that Jesus makes is, there's this poor woman who put in 2 pennies, and that was such a larger gift that she gave than any of these other rich people giving out of their plenty, because of their abundance they gave. And the lesson of, where is that?
That is in Luke, and it's in Luke 22.
Look at you crushed it.
21, 22.
Yeah, and the takeaway is like when you're giving to others and you're giving out of your necessity, that's such an amazing gift. Mm-hmm. But what the mindset that takes, and you look at the mindset of these people, what's the purveying thing? Did y'all catch it? Did anybody catch it? What's the purveying thing that the person with 1 talent said?
Oh yeah, well that's the thing is.
What was the motivation?
I knew you'd be a hard man. His perception of God was that God was a hard man.
Verse 25 is what struck me.
What's 25 say? I was afraid.
Yeah. It says, and I was afraid. And I went away and hid your talent in the ground.
Well, he was afraid because of his perception of God.
Well, it says that we're supposed to be afraid of God. Like we're supposed to fear God.
For sure. Yeah, fear and reverence. But his fear was that he understood God to be not what he was.
Not what he was.
But the other 2 talents, they perceived God to be joyful.
I'm so toying with this in my own thoughts to say it takes faith. It takes a degree of faith to say, okay, I've been given this money. What if I gave it all away? All of it. All the money that I have. What if I invested all of it? Because God's going to give us more. This is what he says. To everyone who has, more shall be given.
Okay. Well, I think this is another thing why we have to be careful not to...
I've been toying with it. I don't have it in my mind.
I don't know if that's... See, that question is, if you're applying it to this parable, you have to ask, is that the responsible thing to do? Because the talents are responsibilities. Maybe that's not the most responsible thing to do.
That's a good point.
Maybe sometimes... Maybe certain situations, giving money is good for this person, but in other situations, maybe this person needs to be taught how to fish instead of being given a fish. I don't know. That's just my observation.
The motivations behind these people are to go to work, though. To say, like 16 says, immediately the one who had received the 5 talents went and traded it and started going to work.
Yeah.
Gave it to business, like yours says.
He did business. And
gained 5 more talents. Now, he put that money to work. It's definitely an attitude of, okay, I've been given this, now let's go.
He understood that he saw his master to be joyful, and he understood that he could be joyful and that he would be joyful if he did this. And his perception of God was a joyful God. I mean, I think a master, but in our case, our application, a joyful God. When we perceive God to be a hard man, we want to play it safe, and we're going to bury our talents in the ground. We're killing ourselves, basically. So how do we perceive God? I mean, that was another thing I talked about. I talked to the teens about. I don't know if I want to, because we came to like a big revelation, but I don't know. Mention it here. I mean, basically, I find it. I asked the teens. I said, "Look, how do you perceive God?" He's serious. I kind of see him as like someone who, doesn't play around, doesn't mess around. He's stern. It's like kind of negative, Death. I think of God, and I think of death.
Fire coming out of the sky and consuming people.
Okay. Now, what do you think of Jesus?
The exact opposite.
The exact opposite.
Mm-hmm.
What in the world? How? Jesus is God walking on earth. He's God in the flesh. Mm-hmm. He's the Son of God. He is God. He's part of the Trinity. And so the core, foundation, character, the light of who God is needs to be found together and the same. Sure, they have different roles and and even responsibilities, but who they are is the same. Mm-hmm. I think. So I found that interesting. I think sometimes we think the exact same way. And if we can be like these other talented men, two talented people here, we can perceive God and see him as Jesus. Give us the passion to do the right thing with what we're responsible over.
It's interesting because it reminds me of David's concepts of what he writes in the Psalms and even his own choices. Mm-hmm. There were several times in the Old Testament where David was confronted with a choice.
Yeah.
And God even loved him enough to, I suppose, give him choices of even consequences that he did.
Yeah.
At the end of 1 Samuel, that last chapter is so odd if you think about it in the narrative. But to say David counted the people, like he took a census of the people, which in the old law you were not supposed to do if you were a leader.
Right.
That's the one thing you didn't do is you didn't worship idols and you didn't number the people. And so David somehow was compelled to do so, and God gave him a choice. He says, well, you can either be...
Oh, yeah, he gives him three
things,
right?
Yeah, and one of them is pestilence, and then David doesn't choose. But what David says is, do not let me fall into the hands of men, because the mercies of God are infinite. And so David knew God. David was a man after God's own heart. David knew the mercies that God would give.
Yeah.
And so to perceive God as a merciful God, I mean, the Psalms are just covered with that. Like, he is my stronghold. He's my shepherd. That was before Jesus ever really came as a human to the planet. But the Word was with God, and the Word is God. And
Carrie Johnson chimed in and said something pretty wise. We had her on the podcast.
She's sharp.
She's sharp, and she's like, I see these two men that did something with their talents as people who have a real relationship with God. I'm like, yeah, that's it.
See, that's
a
a woman of God.
Yeah,
telling you it's like sharp,
laying it down.
I know.
And the teens are so
wisdom.
smart. They're so good. And it was such a great conversation to hang out with them and
to have a relationship.
Yeah,
they knew him better. That's an interesting point. I didn't even catch that until now.
Yeah, they knew him better.
Where he said, "I knew you to be." This is the servant who was given one talent, master. I knew you to be a hard man.
Right.
Reaping where you did not sow. So
You didn't know him very well.
There's jealousy there.
Yeah.
There's envy.
Oh, I mean, that goes back. No, we're going back to the Cain and Abel, going back to the garden.
I know that
Sin.
you benefit off of my hard work. So maybe he was trying to pull rank and pull power and be like, I didn't want to give you any more. I didn't want to give you any more back. That might be reading too much into it, but to have the wrong relationship, to think that you're better.
If not envious at God, maybe envious at the other servants.
Maybe, but to say, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. That's judgment. You're passing judgment on this person. It's like, you shouldn't be benefiting.
Who are you to
off
judge me?
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're my
Interesting.
master and I'm
Right.
your slave.
Yeah.
But he says he was afraid and went away and hid your talent in the ground. Didn't put it to work. There's so much to unpack there. It's almost, we need to keep talking about it perhaps, but we're out of time. But I would say that that's such an interesting perception to view with a negative concept or relationship, just to say, I knew you to be not kind, but completely missing the fact that he just gave him a year's wages. Here's a year's wages.
And trusted him, which is a pretty kind thing to do. Here's $1 million, and I entrust you to do something good with that.
Wow. And I just go put it in a
Put it
jar in my backyard. Let me bury it.
When you put it in that perspective, yeah.
With no intention of putting it to work. Now it makes sense. It's like, well, I need to keep it secure because I'm afraid, somebody's going to steal it or whatever. It'd be pretty horrible, right? If somebody came and take it. But then,
well, he also maybe has no confidence in himself to go do something. I don't know. And I could be reading too much into it as well.
Yeah, I would just say that the fear, there's something to fear that keeps coming up in the Bible over and over and over again. Like when Saul was motivated to sin, when Saul was motivated to lead the people astray from God's word, is because he feared the people. The Bible tells us that. There's something that fear does to us that causes us to fall.
So Paige was watching a movie. See if you can guess this movie.
Okay.
And the bad guy gave a pretty good quote. He's like, what is the one thing that can overcome fear? He's like, it's hope. You know the movie I'm talking about?
Oh. The one thing that can overcome fear is hope.
Yeah.
I do not know this movie.
It's Hunger Games.
Oh.
Yeah.
I do not know that movie. You found it.
Yeah.
You found the series that I do not watch.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't really care for it.
Rose was saying that the new one's coming out. It's like,
yeah,
let's go watch
it's
it.
all
And
the
I'm like,
rage, and it's
like,
on.
I'm not going to watch
It's
that.
on everywhere. And I'm doing other stuff in the kitchen, and I hear that, and I'm like, well, that's actually a pretty good observation.
Well done.
Yeah. I was like, wow.
Egg on my face.
Yeah. No, you're the movie guy. I'm just asking. I didn't know that either. I just heard it. And
Well, that's very biblical, isn't it?
yeah, in a lot of ways. He was using it as an evil way,
Which is
to just give them a little bit of hope so that they die, but they keep going. But I think, and God gives us not a wishful hope, but an assurance, and that should make us overcome any fear that we have.
absolutely confidence.
Yeah, give us confidence.
A confidence to act and be productive, and to, you were given some, but then that's the conclusion of this parable, is to everyone who has, more shall be given, and he will have an abundance. But the one who does not have, even what he has shall be taken away. What?
Oh, well, that goes back to Ecclesiastes as well.
Yeah.
What does it say there? Is it Ecclesiastes 2? We're all just working for the righteous man. Is that right?
Ecclesiastes 2.
Oh,
Let's
man,
go.
It's a bummer. I wrote it in my notes in my Bible on my desk, but I didn't.
Well, I guess we
don't
could
have
wait
it.
for you to walk to your office real quick.
I think I think we can find it. Ecclesiastes 2.
We'll
I think
just
it's near
kill
the
the
end
time.
of the chapter. Here we go. We're closing out. Be patient with us, Wes. Just chill out. You'll get to your video games in a second.
We'll edit this out. Wisdom excels folly.
Oh, man.
The futility of labor. Ooh. Ecclesiastes 2.
Okay,
18?
okay, 26.
Okay.
For the one who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and joy. But to the sinner, he gives the task of amassing wealth only to give it to the one who pleases God. All right? And this is the task of the wicked. It's futile. It's like chasing the wind.
For to a person who is good in God's sight, God has given his wisdom and knowledge and joy. To the sinner, he's given the task of gathering and collecting, so that he too. Wow. Wow, that is so. We need to unpack that in another episode.
Another episode, yeah.
That's amazing to say that all I've done is acquired wealth.
Mm-hmm.
You can't take it with you.
In the end, God's going to give to his righteous abundance. What we have to end on is, do you have a relationship with God?
And how do you view God?
Yeah, how do you view him?
Is he the one who unjustly takes and never gives, or
Has he given you
everything?
everything? With that, go so. If you want to know more about the Bible or you have any questions, our email is in the description below. You can DM us. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're looking for a church family or you're in the Lubbock area, we invite you to come visit and hang out with us in Milwaukee. We love for you to find a church who practices the love of Christ.